Welcome back, guys, to another race.
This is episode 101 of our My Team career mode for the Japanese Grand Prix in Season 6. If you guys did miss the previous episode, episode 100, then be sure to go check the one out before you see this one. We had a special one-off livery to commemorate the milestone of getting to 100 Grand Prix for not only ourselves as a driver, but also as a team, of course, in this alternate My Team career mode universe on F1 2021. And it was a pretty chaotic one around Singapore, and quite an important one for the World Drivers' Championship. With 4 rounds to go, myself and our teammate George Russell, my rival from last season, we are level on points with 4 races to go. GIOVINAZZI a couple of points back, so it's all to play for here in the last 4 rounds, and it means it really is now crunch time as we're at the very last portion of this, very, very topsy-turvy season. It may have been quite a rocky start to the season early on. It now seems like a lifetime ago, those, first races and the, massive, adversity we had to kind of overcome early on in the season with, a first DNF, then getting massively unlucky at the Canadian Grand Prix, of course, with that double puncher. Then we went to the French Grand Prix. We were into the lead of the race, battling George Russell, and then we had a second DNF of the season, but then we bounced back in style. We dug deep, and a lot changed in the entire season in terms of where drivers were, with, multiple driver transfers mid-season going into the British Grand Prix, and then we were able to get back-to-back wins. A very chaotic race at Italy where everything that could have happened did happen, and then Singapore, and you come to now, level on points, myself and George, nothing between us. So, kind of, even though this season's been very, very different to last season, some things stay the same. Myself and George Russell, very, very equally matched, and it's one of the reasons why we signed him to the team for this season, a massive challenge of going up against our championship rival from last season, but this time in the same machinery. But this year we've been surprised by Antonio Giovinazzi being a third man in the middle of the fight there. He was leading the championship for most of this season up until the halfway point where myself and George started to pick up the pace a little bit and apply the pressure. Of course, he moved from Red Bull to Lotus Renault halfway through this season, so that's been a very surprising change. But, with 4 rounds to go, it really is all to play for despite everything that's happened. We're all still so close. And I go into the Japanese Grand Prix very much feeling like it is crunch time in the season. And at the 4 races remaining, this may be one of the toughest challenges we face to the end of the year, because, well, around here, the AI are so quick in qualifying, and they're so bloody consistent in the race when it comes to the lap times, even with the tyre wear. So it's going to be a challenge. Q1, we're there with George, but I expect as we go on through into Q2 and Q3, others will speed up. I'm sure Ferrari will. They've always been there, at least on Saturday. They had a torrid time last episode with, both of them crashing into each other. And we've got quite a spread there of teams being quite quick in Q1, so you just never know what's going to happen as we enter the second part of qualifying, then barreling into turn 1 a bit too quickly there as we go wide and have to take a lot of curb just to keep the car going through that right-hander. So already losing a bit of time on the opening of this first flyer in Q2. I imagine we may actually need to take a second lap here in the second part of qualifying to get through into the top 10 shootout, because that first sector was just really very, very slow, and across the line it's not a great lap time, a 1:23.6. I think those guys, 1:23.4. There's at least 2 tenths on the table we need to try and find to get comfortably into the top 10 shootout. We're P9 at the moment, so we're right on the cusp with a very quick Norris having got on the podium last episode in P10. You've got Tsunoda and a few others down below that could set better lap times. I think Gasly maybe one of them in the AlphaTauri. Thankfully, you can see we have gained the time in the first sector and the second sector. Purple in the second, actually. A bit slow in the last few corners there. A lot of understeer creeping in right at the end, but across the line, and that will get us through into the top 10 shootout. And look how close things are. That is unbelievable. We've got 3 tenths covering the top 10. That is amazing. You've got the 2 Ferraris, like I said, showing that they're still very, very good in qualifying trim. Leclerc, having won last episode of the Singapore Grand Prix, he does a madness being that high on medium tyres versus everyone else on the soft tyres. So that may pay him dividends in the race tomorrow, potentially. And myself, Russell and Giovinazzi, very close together. And just kind of, we can't get rid of each other, basically, in terms of qualifying and how, how quick we are. We're so equalised, it would seem, just like myself and Russell were last last season. And as the sun comes down, it's now time for the top 10 shootout here around Suzuka. Much cleaner turn 1, not going too wide, but also not too tight to kind of compromise the exit from that. And then it's all about just trying to get the gearing correct, rolling the car through, building the momentum, and not scrubbing off too much speed mid-corner to keep the speed up. At the moment, Russell down in P7. I've gone into the middle of the session, or towards the end of the session. They've already all set their lap times here because I only have one tyre left. So at the moment, Russell down the order, P7. Giovinazzi at the sharp end, I think, on provisional pole. Across the line for us, what's it going to be? It is... wow. Wow, oh wow. That is so disappointing. What the hell went on there? Giovinazzi on pole position in his Lotus Renault, and Russell P6, and then myself P10. We're kind of, you know, spread at the top, in the middle, and the bottom. But what went on there for us? Where did the lap time go in Q3? I thought that was actually a pretty good lap time. It wasn't like I thought I made a mistake anywhere, and the time just did not develop. That is even weirder. That's even worse than if I made a mistake, because I genuinely thought that was at a decent lap time. I think if we matched our Q2 lap time, we may have just been right behind Russell in P7, but it looks like everyone else just improved so much more, found some extra tenths in the tank that I did not have, so we may be on for a very difficult race, and on Sunday, let's go to the grid.
We come to you live today from the Mie Prefecture in the south of Japan's Honshu Island for a race that has seen many title deciders over the years. Some simple, some controversial, but all contributing to a legacy that makes the Japanese Grand Prix an indispensable stop in any Formula One season. A lap of this historic racetrack covers 3.6 miles, and it's the only time during the season that we race on a figure-of-8 racetrack. The drivers can expect some intense G-forces through the 18 corners on offer here as they experience some of the highest average apex speeds on the Formula One calendar. And keep an eye out for overtakes going into the final chicane. With the Grand Prix nearly upon us, Anthony Davidson is by my side once again to offer his perspective. Why don't we discuss Red Bull? What do you make of their performance so far this season?
Well, the atmosphere within that team seems very positive at the moment. Everyone seems like they're in great spirits and having a lot of fun doing what they do, and that's definitely contributed to the performances we've seen.
It's time to take a look at our starting grid for today's race. Antonio Giovinazzi will lead us away from pole position, and it's Esteban Ocon in P2. Moving on to the rest of the grid, we have Gasly, Sainz, Valtteri Bottas, and Russell, Leclerc, Drugovich, Mick Schumacher, the owner driver, Stroll, Norris, Yuki Tsunoda, and Lundgaard, Joe, Aitken, Max Verstappen, and Daniel Ticktum. Armstrong, Eilert, Matsushita, and Lewis Hamilton rounds off the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track.
Well, that was a pretty confusing and downbeat qualifying. P10, we've just got to try and put that behind us and try and give it our best to do well in this Grand Prix. But, you know, Giovinazzi looked insane to get that pole in the Lotus Renault. If you look at where his teammate Lundgaard was outside the top 10. Russell, decent versus us, so we've got some work cut out for us. Strategy is going to be, well, difficult. You know, the default's a one stop onto hard compound tyres, and the two stop, it can work for you, but you really do need to be going at it like the clappers to make that work. So, I don't know. We're going to see how it goes in the first stint, and then we'll kind of decide what we're going to do from there. But let's get into this then. 4 rounds to go in the season. Myself and Russell level on point. Giovinazzi chasing. He's on pole today, though. 5 red lights, and we're underway for the Japanese Grand Prix in the 4 last races of this season. Schumacher with a great stop versus Leclerc. Slow off the line on the medium tyre. We hold position in P10. Lance Stroll trying to go around the outside of us in the Red Bull car. Schumacher squeezed out by Leclerc, and we're able to then make an overtake into P9 there. So Leclerc helping us out a tad as we see up the road. The pole sitter is down the order. Antonio Giovinazzi has been pushed down to P3, and it's Esteban Ocon who lined up on the front row alongside him in P1. Let's see how this progresses though, because we've seen so many times the Ferraris qualify well on a Saturday, and then Sunday either bad luck or tyre wear or just poor strategic decisions, are their downfall. They really need to bounce back after a dismal, effort last episode where they both crashed into each other. But Ocon is controlling this race now on lap 1, ahead of Gasly. Giovinazzi's down to P3 then. I don't really know what went on for him. He just must have got a really poor exit, because turn 1's quite difficult to actually make a move once you're, ahead of a car, because of how the corner tightens up. So surprising there for Gio, and disappointment for him as he wants to try and get as many points as he can, of course, on myself and Russell. And what a race to do it at when, you've got myself down here in P9. It might be P8 soon as we lift off through 130R, trying to make sure we don't hit the back of Leclerc. He's struggling for out-and-out pace, because on those mediums, of course, maybe strategically kind of, better later on in the race, but right now, those mediums are the slower compounder tyre, and it's the battle of the worst camera angles here between Leclerc and Schumacher. Lance Stroll might get involved there. It's 3 wide maybe into turn 1. AlphaTauri versus Mercedes versus Red Bull. Ultimately, there'll be Schumacher in the silver arrow on the outside of turn 1. That gets it up into P9. Leclerc really struggling for pace. It's a far cry from last episode where he went on to win the Singapore Grand Prix. Now let's look at a replay of Giovinazzi, and it was just really a shocking start off the 5 red lights. Nothing more than that then. Ocon gets him before they even start braking for turn 1, and then Gasly also nips down the inside there. So Antonio will be punching himself a little bit there. I don't know if there's, a clutch issue or what, but, whatever the case is, you can see on the onboard of the AlphaTauri how poor that exit was, that, Gasly had to move across the circuit not to get held up by the Lotus Renault. So we'll keep an eye on that for later in the Grand Prix to see if the Italian can try and fight back for his P1 that he earned on Saturday. Meanwhile, we're now chasing after Felipe Drogovic, one of the new rising stars of this season. Locking up though, feeling the pressure from us in the mirrors maybe. We're hustling and harrying him left and right, and now trying to go around the outside, dip a tyre onto the grass. The Brazilian squeezes us, but we keep our foot firmly planted to the throttle pedal, and we're able to get up into P7, and that is the experience there paying off of just keeping the wits about us, keeping it going around the outside, not getting scared off by the youngster in the Red Bull. And now can we chase after our teammates? Going to be difficult though, because I'm not going to lie, I do not feel comfortable in this car right now. I've made some overtakes at the start of this race, but in terms of the feeling of the car, it feels very despondent. I don't know if that's the tyre wear of the soft compound, but it's hard to explain. But every time I'm turning in these first opening laps, it just doesn't feel like I'm fully connected to the car as much as I was last episode. The front end won't bite in, and there's just a general bit of understeer I'm feeling. Whether that's the tyre wear on the front tyres, I don't know. But, Russell's not doing too well either, P6, in comparison to maybe how we've done in past races. We were looking for, stringing together multiple wins in a row as a team. My double win and then Russell's win after that. So, just maybe it's maybe a circuit that doesn't bode well with the FOM My Team car. We know that with maxed out cars for most of these teams now, it is very track dependent. And so on lap 4, with these issues in mind, I started to formulate a plan to pit early and try the 2-stop. So we are coming in. This is a gamble, but the thing is, I actually don't think I'm going to make much progress on the hard compounder tyre. I wasn't really catching Russell that much on these soft tyres. That may be the tyre wear, but I frankly don't think I'm going to have any better pace or chance of catching Russell and having a go at him, and then subsequently trying to maybe have any sort of, say in catching Giovinazzi on the hard compounder tyre. I just think we're going to get stuck in a DRS train. We're going to get stuck in a maxed out car train around Suzuka. That happens a lot, unfortunately, actually, at this circuit. Even with, so much action this season, this one is always maybe a little bit more of a normal affair, I guess, in terms of F1 races. So I'm trying something different. In past seasons in this series, we've seen AI do the 2-stop, and it's worked out for them if they have enough pace. And on the mediums, well, I've not tried the mediums this entire race weekend, but I know how I feel about the hard tyres, and the soft compound was not really working for me, past a certain point there in the first stint. So let's see if this medium tyre is going to pay us dividends. I guess we'll find out if this strategy may work in this second stint. if we can try and catch all these cars and overtake them and build a gap to make that second extra pit stop as we dive down the inside of Hamilton, struggling in that Haas in the back marker team, along with his, well, fellow teammate Max Verstappen as of late in this career mode alternate universe of ours. Very, very strange still to say, and there's a mistake there for Callum Ilott. That's what the yellow flags were at whilst we overtook Hamilton there. Big AI mistake, just, you know, got the rear end stepping out there with the tyre wear maybe, and so Aston Martin going from bad to worse here. You know, they've already lost their backing of the Stroll family as Lawrence Stroll's moved to buy the whole Red Bull team as it's known currently at the moment, and so I suspect Aston Martin may not be going anywhere very quickly without that funding next season. We're making some good progress now, up into P18, it'll be 17, just ahead of Valtteri Bottas, so that's already one car we've jumped that was ahead of us before the first round of pit stops then, and we set the fast up the Grand Prix a couple of times now, finding a groove in the clean air, but now this is the crucial point of the race. Can we continue to find the pace whilst we overtake cars round the outside of the BMW Sauber there into P16? That was pretty okay, but we still lost time though. Even though that was a pretty smooth move, we lost time in the first sector, red first sector on the top right there, so that's the only annoyance with the two-stop here. You feel great whilst you're going like the clappers, but, you know, actually you are losing a bit of time every time you fight slower cars, so we need to be kind of flying through these guys. Giovinazzi, though, only up the road by about 2 seconds there, I would say, so, you know, we have closed the gap to even Giovinazzi, you would say. You know, we weren't this close to him on circuit before the pit stop, so we're bridging that gap, but we need to bridge it, overtake him, and then grow the gap because we've got that extra pit stop, whereas everyone else is only making one stop, I believe, onto hard tyres. We've got that second round of pit stops for the remaining guys who have not made their stop yet. And where is Russell as he comes down the pit lane exit? He is behind us, so we've jumped him already then. No need to overtake him on track and have any kind of awkwardness there, but now it's time to continue on, overtake Sainz hopefully, and then try and overtake Giovinazzi. Gasly ahead, you can see they're getting held up a little bit by one of the BMWs who's yet to pit, Jack Aiken there, doing us a massive favour. Held up Gasly and Gio, a treat, but look at this, as we go to overtake Sainz, he's making a move on Gio, making a move on Gasly, and we narrowly miss making some potentially race-ending contact with the Ferrari and the Lotus Renault. I was so focused on there maybe being a three-wide battle, I wasn't paying attention to where they were about to break, and so you're going to see here in this replay, look how close this is if we slow it down. So I didn't realise that they're braking now as Sainz's DRS closes. I'm still going full pelt into turn one, and we're literally millimetres, a few pixels away from slamming into the side of Sainz and then even rear-ending Giovinazzi then, because, you know, usually you don't actually break that early. I guess the AI in a battle side by side maybe go a little bit earlier on the brakes, so having to hold our breath a bit, and then finally we get past Carlos Sainz in the end just before the spoon curves, but we make a mistake. We've gone wide, the Spaniards back at us, and Sainz gives us a real good fight on the exit then, side by side, looking to use the ERS to get back ahead of him though, but you know, like I said in the first stint, didn't feel too great, even though we've got some good pace on these mediums. I don't know what it is, the car just feels still a bit weird and unresponsive, so a few times on the curves we've had to overcorrect ourselves, and that was a kind of the biggest mistake we made so far in this race, having to go wide and use the runoff at spoon curves. But now we close up to Giovinazzi and Gasly. Ocon a bit further ahead, he's been in supreme control of this entire race ever since he got into the lead, but can we try and get Gio? This is crucial, we need to get past him and then try and pull away from him as much as we can, because ultimately I want to try and chase after him in the second stint, but it's going to be difficult. But in the grand scheme of things, this is so much better than, you know, just being on hards, because at this point in the race I probably would have been stuck behind Russell or battling him way too hard still on the hard compound tyre. Instead, we're making moves like this on the inside of Gasly there at 130R, cut across to defend the inside line. Gasly does really well though to fight me so much. No love lost between myself and my biggest F1 game rival, Pierre Gasly, but now he's fought us so hard and and compromise his own racing line. That GIOVINAZZI now with DRS on the inside. The Lotus Renault is going to get the elbows out and get through into what is P3 on the road at the moment. It may end up being P2 once I make my pit stop, and depending on where I can go through in the second stint. But GIOVINAZZI, a crucial move for him that gets him ahead of at least one of the cars that overtook him on the 5 red light sequence. Meanwhile, Russell's just doing his thing in P6. They're not really making any inroads too much, but he is slowly catching to the pack that I am in, that I'm heading actually, because with all that fighting, that we've all slowed each other down. So Russell's only now about a second away from Carlos Sainz, ironically, but Ocon is just, well, dominating this race. No one's got anywhere close to touching him apart from myself. But we're now going to make our pit stop, our second pit stop, in for now 10 laps to go in this Grand Prix. So it'll be 10 qualifying laps on a second set of medium tyres, because I could have maybe gone to softs, but they're all used, of course, and obviously the medium has worked very well for us. It's definitely been the best race tyre for us, personally. Everyone else obviously has chosen the hard compound tyre, which I'm surprised at, because last season we did see a few people trying a two-stop. This season, for whatever reason, no one is trying a two-stop apart from myself, so it's a bit odd how that works season to season, but it does mean that, you know, the F1 game does keep it a bit interesting. You know, not every season's the same track to track every single time. But we're now pushing like an absolute stabbed rat onto lap 20. Purple, purple, purple. We just keep on putting in the fastest laps of this Grand Prix, powering past Guan Yu Zhou in the Williams. Really struggling in this second part of the season. Williams Jaguar are just not finding that same pace they were showing in the last 2 seasons in this series. Meanwhile, at the sharp end, P4 to 3, there's a battle brewing between Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly. Sainz trying to make it a double Ferrari podium. What a turnaround this would be from Singapore. Round the outside he goes, and that's such a horrendous camera angle to find out what's happening there. I think Sainz tried around the outside, didn't quite work. He tried to switch it, and it didn't work either, and so Gasly remains in P3. But that's what we want. If those guys fight, we can maybe catch them potentially. We now look to make a move on Lundgaard. Lundgaard squeezing me to the right-hand side, trying to do his teammate a favour then by trying to hold me up as much as he can, but we ultimately just switch him to the left-hand side and dummy him, and now we can make a move on the McLaren Mercedes, the guys we fought so hard last season, remember, the reigning Constructors Champions. They've not done as well this season, of course. We made them weaker by, you know, taking one of their star drivers, George Russell, the man I fought, and also taking their title sponsor with Gulf Racing. So now down the inside of Sonoda, powering past are now Chrome and red Vodafone McLaren Mercedes cars up into P11, and now we're only 1 position away from points paying positions. And meanwhile on lap 23, Marcus Armstrong versus Max Verstappen, Williams Jaguar v the Haas. A very unorthodox fight this is, but Marcus Armstrong trying to go down the inside of Verstappen. This is one of the few battles happening right now in the race, because everyone's just stuck in this loop on the hard tyres, and that's why, you know, that's why I hate them so much. The hard compound, it doesn't even allow a good race, because everyone's chosen the same compound, and everyone just can't get the tyres warmed up, or they're not gripping up too well to go racing, and now everyone's stuck in a bit of a train, just like we saw at Imola in the real-life Grand Prix just gone by. But Sainz is going to try and break the mould and go down the inside, and he has made the move on Pierre Gasly finally, and so he makes it a double Ferrari potential podium right now. There's still plenty of the race to go for Ferrari to have their usual disaster, but, you know, GIOVINAZZI P2, he looks pretty comfortable there. You know, he's had the measure of Gasly in terms of race pace, but he's also not kept up with Ocon. Ocon has been dominating this entire race, and if he goes on to actually finish this off and win this Grand Prix, that'll be 3 wins for the season, and only one person's done that as well, and that's George Russell. That'll be more wins this season for Ocon than myself and GIOVINAZZI, which is very surprising, and, you know, does mean Ocon, you know, could just about late on put himself in frame for a very outside chance of the championship, maybe. You know, never say never in Formula 1. As we go on the outside of Mick Schumacher now, we're really powering past these guys. You know, you can just see every single straight, the acceleration we got, the grip the tyres are giving us, pulling us along like a tow rope towards these cars is so strong. The medium tyre really is the race tyre to be on. It's the one I've wanted to be on, and I know for a fact we'll be be feeling so miserable right now at this point of the race if we stuck onto the hard tyres. This is the way to go. We've gone around the outside of Leclerc, up into P8, and we've still got 4 laps left of the Grand Prix. And up the road, I can just about see George Russell. You know, if we can't catch Antonio Giovinazzi, minimum, we need to try and aim for George Russell. We're level on points with our teammate there going into this race. If we can beat him today, that would be very, very ideal. You know, clearly the car has not been up to the lofty heights and pace that we saw in previous races. Maybe it's just this track. Giovinazzi has, the Ferraris have, so you've got to take what we can get and, you know, do the best job we can do, and that's beating Russell at least and getting past these cars. And we make light work of the 2 Red Bulls, Stroll and then Drogovic into P7, and now we've just got 1 car between myself and Russell. And you know what, Gasly, having been overtaken by Carlos Sainz, he's actually not too he's actually fallen back, and he's actually falling into the clutches of Russell, so we might even be able to get the AlphaTauri, so we might be able to potentially get a top 4 here, which is very, very good in my book, having done 1 extra stop. And from how, you know, low this race looked earlier on, we make very easy work of Bottas there, down into 130R with a load of ERS. And now we've got our teammate, the man we're level on points with, right ahead of us then. But he may try and overtake Gasly later on in this race. We've got what is going to be 2 laps to go now as we enter lap 26 of 27. DRS open for both our cars. Gasly does not have DRS off the Ferrari. And so Russell tries to go down the inside there. Doesn't quite do it. We now have a go on the outside of Russell. Have a little look through, but just not close enough to get alongside him. But it's game on. We're right there with him now into the hairpin. Tyre on the grass a tiny bit as we try and widen the corner as much as we can. Get the exit we want, plant the power, get the ERS going. Russell slowing on the hard tyre. We're gaining, and we're going past Russell, making easy work. No, he actually fights us a little bit mid-corner, but in the end of it, it is easy work for us because ultimately his tyre wear's kicking in now on the hard compound tyre. Ocon, though, on the last lap of the Grand Prix then, he's been in a world of his own. It's been the Ocon show here at the Japanese Grand Prix. What a victory this is going to be for him and Ferrari. What a bounce back from that, you know, horrendous Singapore Grand Prix. And like I said, you know, that's 3 wins for the Frenchman. That's, you know, the only man who's equal that is Russell. So that's quite impressive. And as I said, maybe puts him into a late frame for the championship fight. I don't know. I think he's going to be maybe about 20 points off us. So it's, you know, doable just about if, you know, myself, Russell and Gio were to have some slower races. But, you know, Gio's in P2 there, so that may not happen. But Giovinazzi, though, might I say, doing a stunning job. Because just as you saw there, Lundgaard, he's in P14. And Giovinazzi in the same car is P2. So it just shows, yes, the Lotus Renault has been an improved car this season, generally speaking. But really, when Drogovic was there in the team, it was more him as a driver doing the work, getting that win at Austria that earned him ultimately the drive at the Red Bull Porsche team right now. And ultimately, it's Giovinazzi as a driver doing wonders at that team to use that car to get up into P2, and Lundgaard just can't do the same thing at the moment. And so it's going to be another solid podium for Giovinazzi as we round out this last lap of the Grand Prix. We've tried to push as hard as we can to gain on Gasly, but it's not going to be it, I don't think. Here comes Ocon, though, for his 3rd win in his debut season for the Scuderia Ferrari. What a win for Ocon, dominant fashion, and we are so close to Gasly. 1 more lap and we may have got him. Not to be. It's still a pretty damn good race. I think we did so much better than we would have done on the hard compounded tyre. We earned the driver of the day and we made the 2-stop work to get ahead of Russell at least. Decent enough.
Great effort there from Ferrari to take the victory today. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
I think that smart tyre management on track and very smooth driving definitely assisted in their victory today. That combination meant they got the absolute maximum out of their tyres at all times.
Looking at the podium, you can see that red suit familiar to fans across the globe. A world-class win for a world-class team. Ferrari do it again.
A very good response to a very bad race at Singapore. Double podium for Ferrari. Ocon with the win. Like I said, puts himself in the frame for the championship maybe. But Giovinazzi in P2, that's, you know, it's not the win, you know, from the pole position. But that's still a really good load of points. That will swing him into the lead of the Drivers' Championship, I believe. So, you know, as it has done most of this season, most of this series, you know, the championship does yo-yo about, you know, with these massive swings at different Grand Prix. You know, it's like almost like a boxing bout, you know, punches left, right, and this time Antonio Giovinazzi's got the left hook up into P1. We are only 1 point behind him though, so it's still very, very fine. 4 points behind Russell, and then like I said, look at Ocon there, 20 points back. Mathematically, he is still in the championship fight. I don't think he's necessarily there in the frame of it right now in terms of the focus, but mathematically, it is still on for him, but it's so bloody close between myself, Gio, and George Russell. In the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari, though, with that double podium, it's kind of been a bit of a quiet season for Ferrari. We haven't really talked about them too much. A lot of the time, we've spoken about them when they've made a huge howler, or there's a DNF for Carlos Sainz, but thanks to Ocon's efforts this season, Ferrari, they have recovered, for the first time. They're in the top 2 this late on into the season. I don't think they've been in the top 2 since, maybe season 1 or season 2, maybe, this late on into the season. They've got ahead of Red Bull, who we thought we were fighting for the Constructors' Championship. At one point, we were worried about Red Bull being all dominant with Mick Schumacher and Giovinazzi, kind of showing, although Lawrence Stroll's bought out the team and got himself, his son a drive and Drogovic, a very exciting star in that car, kind of shows that, Red Bull were doing much better with Giovinazzi and Schumacher at the wheel, actually, and, it's kind of, to their downfall, really, and that's also meant that, with Giovinazzi moving over to Lotus Renault, Lotus up into P5 ahead of Mercedes and the reigning champions McLaren. So, yeah, really great to see, even into Season 6, the pecking order changing season to season, and, you just never know where the story is going to go. It's really, really great to see, and yeah, Ferrari, very surprising to be up there in P2. They're our closest challengers, but myself and George being the most consistent pairing on the grid, dominating the Constructors' Championship at the moment. But guys, if you did enjoy that race, then hit that like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.